YouTube, how's it going guys? Today I'm painting a wedding card in Inktense. I've masked off the letters using masking fluid, and I'm starting to paint the flower in the background. I'm painting this one petal at a time. It's a lot easier to keep track of where all of the shadows are and the shape of the petals if you do it just one petal at a time. I've used just plain water to wet the entire area of the one petal, and then I just dab in little bits of watered down color around the edges where the deepest shadows are, and then that color kind of blends in with the rest of the area because the whole surface is wet. I'll use a little bit of light purple in some of the more shadowed areas just to give it a little bit more dimension, but the shadows are very soft and delicate, so I don't want to make them too harsh. I use a very pigmented yellow color to paint the stamen and pistil of the lily, and then I go over top of that with masking fluid once it's dry to keep that color intense and also to prevent me from going over top with other colors later when I'm painting the petals behind. While I'm waiting for the masking fluid to dry, I start working on some of the other petals using the same method. So I wet the whole area of the petal first with just water, and then I dab in little bits of color, and as it starts to dry I can add more and more color, and it won't bleed as much as it would if it was still freshly wet, so I can get the color into tighter shading areas, I guess you could say. And then I leave those areas to dry, work on the next petals, and just what you want to do when you're painting in this way is not paint an area right next to an area that has just been painted, because what happens when you start painting in a new area and then you come up against another area that's still a little bit wet, you'll get a little bit of bleeding with the colors, and then you'll get like this really weird edging around the part that bled. So you want to try and keep those areas separate. If you're doing a flower like this, work on, like, jump over and work on a different petal, not the one that's right next to it, or use a blow dryer and dry it completely first, and then you can start working on the petal next to that area that you just painted. So because I've masked the pistils and stamen, I can just paint right over top of that when I'm doing the petal that's behind it, and then I don't have to worry about trying to blend the color so that what's behind the stamen matches the petal that's higher up. I can just blend the color evenly, and then when I remove the masking fluid, I'll still maintain that bright, vibrant yellow while also having a nice even shading behind. So after that had dried, I went over top and added another layer of color. And lately what I've been trying to do is, let's say I'm adding color to one of the petals, I'll wet the whole petal all over again. Even if I'm not going to be painting near the top of the petal, I'll still wet that whole area of the petal. And that way when I add the shadowed portions, I won't get a ring of darker color around the area where the water dried, if you know what I mean. So if you're able to paint that whole section, the part where it's going to dry with a darker colored edge is going to be right where there's an edge anyway, so you won't notice it as much. So I'm just doing the same thing, painting the whole area, adding a little bit more color, making it a little bit more saturated. And then once I have the general color and shape of the flower, I start working on the background. For this, I'm using the complementary color to the flower. So it's a yellow lily. I'm using purple as the background to really make the lily stand out. I was playing around with trying to lift off color after I had already put it down, and I didn't really like that look, so I added some more paint, or some more of the Inktense paint, and resaturated it, let it dry. And here I'm signing the card with a marker first, because I wanted to see what it would look like if I used the marker to outline the edging of the text. And I didn't like how thick the line was. So instead of using the marker to do that, I used a polychromos pencil crayon, and I sharpened it really, really, really sharp. And then I just went around and did a shadow on the lettering that was just in the purple. And then where the lettering overlapped with the flower, I found that it didn't really stand out enough if I just did the shadow. So I went around the top edge too, where it would be, where the letters would have a highlight. Yes, and it's really important to keep that pencil sharp, because as it gets even just a little bit dull, your lines are going to be kind of fuzzy, and it's just not going to be as sharp, I guess. So after I had finished everything, I had set up the card at the other end of the room, and I realized that it just wasn't popping out enough. So I used that sharp pencil crayon, still just the purple one, and I went around the edges of the petals in some areas just to make those stand out from the white background, and to add a little bit more shading where the petals meet in the corners and then behind the pistil and stamen. And I also added a little bit of orangey red color to the stamen to make them pop out more. But that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and we'll see you next time.